So, hello. I think 1-2 minutes and we start. So, okay. See here 28, 27. Okay, today we start our second section, pedagogy. And it will be lecture number 6. And we've got 3 lecture more, number 6, number 7 and number 8. So about pedagogy it will be 3 lecture. Because we finished with psychology and now we start pedagogy. Pedagogy, it's another science. It's not the same like psychology, but pedagogy and psychology are very close together, but it's not the same. But for example, for pedagogy, psychology gives a lot of information about behavior, about our mind, about our conscious and unconscious, and pedagogy gave psychology different type of teaching, again understanding of behavior and so on. So these two sciences very close together but not the same. Yes, now I see not so many students, but we start our blog. So today in our first lecture about pedagogy, we will speak about subject and objectives of pedagogy, about learning theories, and about education system. So we got 3 blocks, and also in one of these blocks we will speak about different methods of pedagogy, and these methods also used in psychology. And let's start from understanding what is pedagogy in general, and also give you some really short history of pedagogy, because next lecture we will speak about very famous, very important scientist in pedagogy. So, historically, pedagogy has evolved as a science about education of the younger generation. Gradually, the scope of pedagogy expanded and teachers began to call all those who were associated with the training and education of young people. Currently, it is the science of law governing of upbringing and training of the younger generation and adults, and of managing their development in accordance with the needs of society. So pedagogy is a term that refers to the methods of how teachers teach in theory and in practice. Pedagogy is formed by an educator's teaching, beliefs, and concerns the interplay between culture and different ways to learn. In order to help students to build on prior learning, meaningful classroom relationship must exist. Pedagogy refers to the study of teaching approach and how they affect learners. A carefully considered pedagogy is essential in enabling students to learn more effectively and can help them develop high-order thinking skills. There are four common forms of pedagogy. Social, when education is supporting social development. Critical, where some normative perspective. Culturally responsive, sharing background, experience of different culture. And Socratic, developing intellectual and social skill to live in a democratic society. So, let's speak about short history of pedagogy. Just a second, I need to check one thing. So, as I see, the sound and the video is okay. Please, someone write in chat the sound and video, okay? So I repeat one more time. Please write someone in chat the sound and video. It's okay. Oh, thank you very much. Because I don't understand it's work or not. Because my link doesn't work, and thank you that you answer me that the video is okay. So let's speak about history of pedagogy. So throughout the passage of time, it has always been necessary to educate children, and there have always been pedagogies with people developing pedagogical programs through the rethinking of their own experience. Practitioners and theorists of the education process, as they're now referred to today. Due to the absence of written language, their traces were lost to the mist of time even before the advent of antiquity. In order to trace the history of pedagogy, it's important to first define the concept of pedagogy itself, whose meaning has undergone numerous iterations over the century. The concept has always been associated with the history of the development of thought, instructional institution, and the advancement of knowledge on which thinking and education have always relied. So we know different parts of history of pedagogy, and of course right from the beginning, education was assigned the status of an art. So pedagogy is like art, and the art of teaching, of leading children to knowledge. This concept reminds us that the profession of educator first emerged in ancient Greece. Back then, the role of educator was performed by slaves who were given the noble task of walking the master's children to school, taking care of their physical appearance, and accompanying them during their hurt and play. The founding father of education is widely considered to be Socrates. At the end of the 19th century, the development of such scientific fields as sociology and psychology is accompanied by the emergence of pedagogy as an applied science that is starts to be viewed as a true science. Pedagogy is now treated as a science with the understanding that its ultimate objective, as in the other cases, is not so much describe or explain, but instead to guide the process of teaching and learning. That is a field of science that just might teach us how to teach. And of course, next lecture we will speak about more deeply about history of pedagogy. We'll speak about very famous teachers, educators, and scientists. And here is just small short history. And today we no longer debate whether pedagogy is an art or a science. We live in a time when pedagogy, just as medicine or politics, is viewed as applied science. That is a discipline geared towards the practical application of accurate knowledge. So right now pedagogy is big science, very important science, science for all another different science and knowledges. And also we'll see small video about what is pedagogy.
What is pedagogy? Pedagogy is the science and art of education and learning theory. Just as there are fields of study in other subjects, this is the study of teaching. For example, Eva's mom feels good about the math app she just installed because Eva's math teacher said it has high pedagogical value. Pedagogy. Preparing content. How content is presented or delivered to learner. Connects with assets that are needed to present content. Pull together these assets to create cognitive psychology-based learning process. Evaluation of the learning process, whether it is working correctly. Pedagogy methods. Active learning, Bloom's taxonomy, case study method of instruction, flipped classroom, gamification, peer instruction, student engagement systems. Pedagogical considerations. Hidden curriculum, learning space, and learning theories. Pedagogical approaches. Critical pedagogy, dialogic learning, student-centered learning. Can you memorize what is pedagogy? Pedagogy is the science and art of education and learning theory. Just as there are fields of study in other subjects, this is the study of teaching. For example, Eva's mom feels good about the math app she just installed because Eva's math teacher said it has high pedagogical value. For inspiration, to live a creative life, we must lose our fear of being wrong. Anonymous.
So it just was a small video about what is pedagogy, and of course we will speak about methods, different type of pedagogy later. So, opening the subject of pedagogy, it is impossible not to touch its categories, concepts expressing scientific generalization. These categories include education in a word of science, education, training, upbringing, formation, and development. So you can see it here: education, training, formation, upbringing, and development. It's very important part of pedagogy. So let's speak about education. Education in a broad side is a purposeful, organized process that ensures the comprehensive, harmonious development of the individual and preparing it for labor and social activities. Often education is used as a concept educational work, during which beliefs, norm or moral behavior, character traits, aesthetic tastes, physical qualities of a person. Training is a systematic, organized and purposeful process of transferring to the younger generation the knowledge and skills to guide its cognitive activity and the formation of its worldview and means of receiving education. Education is the result of learning. Education is the volume of systematic knowledge, skill, habits, way of thinking that the student mastered. The main criteria of education is systematic knowledge and systematic thinking, the ability of a person to independently replenish the missing link in the knowledge system with the help of new information and logical reasoning. Teaching students this or that knowledge, teachers always give them the necessary direction, forming the most important logical, social, moral, and many other attitudes. Therefore, training is educational in nature. Similarly, any education contains elements of education. Teaching, educate, educate, teach. Development. Development is a process and result of quantitative and qualitative changes in the human body. It is associated with constant increasing changes, transition from one state to another. From an in-depth study of this process, modern science has identified in the development process physical, mental, spiritual, social sides. Upbringing. Parenting or upbringing is the process of promoting and supporting the physical, emotional, social, and intellectual development of a child from infancy to adulthood. Parenting refers to the intercourse of raising a child and not exclusively for a biological relationship. Parenting styles vary by historical time period, race, social class, and other social features. So, pedagogy, most commonly understood as approach to teaching, is the theory and practice of learning and how this process is influenced by the social, political, and psychological development of learning. Pedagogy, taken as an academic discipline, is the study of how knowledge and skills are imparted in an educational context and it considers the interactions that take place during learning. Both the theory and practice of pedagogy vary greatly as they reflect different social, political, and cultural contexts. So, subject of pedagogy. Pedagogy studies the problem of the spiritual development of the personality in conjunction with all other components. The subject of pedagogy is the study of the process of training and education personalities of any age. Objectives of pedagogy. So first of all, determination of patterns in the field of learning, generalization of pedagogical experience. The second is forecasting the development of educational system, then development of new teaching methods, and implementation of research results into education. Also, we consider different learning objectives. For example, what is teaching, what is the purpose of teaching, what is the process of teaching, what are the type of teaching, what are the various teaching methods, what are the qualities of good teaching, how best to teach, how to assess your teaching, and another one. So, our next part is speak about learning theory. And in this part we will see a lot of connection with psychology, because I think you see very understanding words like behaviorism, humanism, and so on. So learning theories is really connected with psychology. Teaching and learning may appear to be a universal experience, but as a prolific number of educational theorists in learning suggest, there are actually an impressive variety of educational approaches to the art of and science of teaching. Many of them have been pioneered by educational theorists who study the science of learning to determine what works best and for whom. Generally, there are 5 widely accepted learning theories teachers rely on. So, behaviorism learning theory, cognitive learning theory, constructivism learning theory, humanism learning theory, and connectivism learning theory. Educational theorists, teachers, and experts believe this theory can inform successful approach for teaching and serve as a foundation for developing lesson plan and curriculum. So let's see these 5 theories. So we can see here 5 theory. So here is theory, explanation, and application. So first of all is behaviorism. We also know behaviorism in psychology. So as simply psychology puts it, behaviorism is only considered with observable stimuli response behaviors, and they can be studied in a systematic and observable manner. So, learning is based on a system of routines that drill information into student memory bank, as well as positive feedback from teacher and an educational institution itself. If students do an excellent job, they receive positive mark and a signal out for recognition. So, of course, it will be a short part explanation and application. So the second one, cognitivism. Learning relies on both external factors like information or data and the internal thought process. So it was developed in 1950s. This theory moved away from behaviorism to focus on the mind's role in learning. According to International Bureau of Education, in cognitive psychology, learning is understood as the acquisition of knowledge. The learner is an information processor who absorbs information, undertake cognitive operation on it, and store it in memory. So it's cognitivism. Like cognitive psychology, we will speak about cognitive psychology later, previously. So, constructivism, humanism, and connectivism. Constructivism, the learner builds upon his or her previous experience and understanding to construct a new understanding. The passive view of teaching views the learner as any empty vessel to be filled with knowledge. Constructivist states that learning constructs meaning only through active engagement with the world, such as experiments, real-world problem solving, and so on. Humanism, a learning-centric approach in which the potential is the focus rather than the method or material. With the understanding that people are really good humanists focus on creating an environment conducive to self-actualization. In doing so, learners need a meet and they are then free to determine their own goals, while the teacher assists in meeting those learning goals. And connectivism, informed by the digital age, connectivism departs from constructivism by identifying and remedying gaps in knowledge. Strongly influenced by technology, connectivism focuses on a learner's ability to frequently source and update accurate information. Knowing how and where to find the best information is as important as the information itself. So this is 5 the most famous and the most well-known theory. And now we will see a video. Just a second. About this 5 learning theory. So it's just a small video, like 8 minutes, about this 5 theory.
The 5 learning theories. Today I will talk about the 5 learning theories, how they work, and how they differ between each other. No 2 students are alike, and the way every person learns will vary. Our brains are all unique, and our experiences all contribute to the different ways we learn. So let's see what these 5 theories are. To better explain them, I'll use some simple and practical examples that, in my opinion, are always the best way to clearly explain complex concepts. Theory number 1, Behaviorism. Behaviorist learning theory, or Behaviorism, utilizes key ideas from the work of Behaviorist Frederick Skinner, an American psychologist, who theorized that learning occurs through a series of rewards or punishments. While Skinner believed that all learning could occur this way, the behaviorist theory is most commonly utilized in classrooms today as a tool for behavior management. According to Skinner, rewards increase the likelihood that behaviors will be repeated, while punishments decrease the likelihood of repetition. He also theorized that rewards and punishments could be either positive or negative in nature. What does this mean? When we give or add something to the environment, the interaction is positive. When we take something away, the interaction is negative. So, for example, removing an undesirable activity from the agenda might be a negative reward, and adding an undesirable activity to it might be a positive punishment. Let's see some examples to better understand these concepts. First example. In Miss Green's first grade classroom, she's working with one of her students, Jenny, to help her with some challenging attention span issues. She's giving her a candy whenever she sees her focused on a task. This is an example of positive reward. Second example, in Mr. Red's third grade classroom, he quietly reminds a student to keep all 4 legs of his chair on the floor. This is an example of positive punishment. Yes, verbal praise and reminders qualify as adding something to the environment. Third example. To increase the number of students who turn in their homework each day, Miss Red announces that if the class has 100% completion on today's assignment, they won't have homework on Friday. This is an example of negative reward. Fourth example. Students in Mrs. Johnson's art class are having trouble sharing the supplies. Mrs. Johnson writes the word art on the board, and each time students have a disagreement over supplies, she erases a letter. If the word is erased completely, students will have to use pencil to complete their project for the day. This is an example of negative punishment. Theory number 2, Cognitivism. Cognitive learning theory is largely based on the work of Jean Piaget, who rejected the idea that learners are passive and simply react to stimuli in the environment. Instead of focusing solely on observable behavior, cognitive theory seeks to explain how the mind works during the learning process. Like a computer, the mind takes in information, processes that information, then uses that information to produce learning outcomes. Piaget's 4 stages of development indicate the learner's ability to understand abstract, complex concepts. A few simple examples. First example, Miss Smith, a kindergarten teacher, works with students to verbally communicate their feelings. She knows that at this age they're naturally egocentric and struggle to see things from others' perspectives. Second example, to help students memorize the periodic table, Miss Williams co-creates various mnemonic devices with her class. Third example, Miss Jones uses a graphic organizer in order to help students write paragraphs with appropriate structure. Fourth example, at the start of every lesson, Mr. Davis asks questions to activate the prior knowledge of his students. He knows this will help to link the new learning concepts to previously retained ideas, increasing the likelihood that the new learning will be remembered. Theory number 3, Constructivism. Constructivists see the learner as a constructor of knowledge. New learning is shaped by schemas, which the learner brings to the learning process. Lev Vygotsky is an important founder of Constructivist learning theory. Vygotsky believed that learning is a collaborative process and that social interaction is fundamental for cognitive development. According to Vygotsky, students learn best when working collaboratively with those whose proficiency level is higher than their own, allowing them to complete tasks they are not yet able to do independently. Vygotsky identified these concepts as the more knowledgeable other and the zone of proximal development. Constructivist classrooms are student-centered, with the teacher acting as the facilitator. As usual, let's see some examples. First example, Ms. Rodriguez intentionally pairs students performing on or above grade level with students performing below grade level, inviting them to turn and talk about their learning throughout a lesson. Second example, Ms. Wilson uses collaborative learning to facilitate engagement with specific learning targets, ensuring heterogeneous student groupings. Third example, Mr. Brown uses problem-based learning to engage his students in solving real-world problems, meeting several learning targets while giving students autonomy to make decisions. He encourages students to work with peers who have different strengths than their own. Theory number 4, Humanism. Humanist learning theory approaches learning as a way to fulfill an individual's potential rather than meeting specific learning targets. Maslow's research on the hierarchy of needs is a major concept within this theory, as it focuses on the whole person, specifically the cognitive and affective needs of the learner. The theory holds that self-actualization is the ultimate goal of each individual. Learners are trusted to determine their own goals, set standards, and evaluate their own work. Thus, students are at the center of the humanist classroom. Teachers are facilitators and coaches, recognizing the unique needs of each student and supporting their academic and social development. Let's see some examples. First scenario, Ms. Anderson begins each day with a morning meeting to check in on her students' emotional well-being and proactively teach them specific coping skills and strategies. Second scenario, Mr. Thomas, an 8th grade science teacher, provides his students a menu of assessment options to illustrate their mastery of learning targets for the unit. Third scenario, Ms. Roberts, a 2nd grade teacher, invites each student to set their reading goal for the quarter. Fourth scenario, Ms. Fox, the school's counselor, partners with local organizations to fill backpacks with food that students can take home to ensure they have food to eat over the weekend. Theory number 5, Connectivism. Connectivism is one of the newest educational learning theories. It focuses on the idea that people learn and grow when they form connections. This can be connections with each other, or connections with their roles and obligations in their life. Hobbies, goals, and people can all be connections that influence learning. Teachers can utilize connectivism in their classroom to help students make connections to things that excite them, helping them learn. Teachers can use digital media to make good, positive connections to learning. They can help create connections and relationships with their students and with their peer groups that help students feel motivated about learning. As you can see, today's classrooms do not solely utilize one learning theory over another, but instead incorporate multiple theories throughout the learning experience. Each theory has strengths and limitations, especially considering the realities of education in the 21st century. Educators must walk the narrow line between creating a student-centered classroom and meeting rigorous learning standards. Each of these theories has its strengths and its weaknesses. Which one of these 5 theories is your favorite? If you wish, leave a comment. If there's enough interest for one of these 5 theories, I might make a more in-depth video about it in the future. If you liked this video, don't miss...
So, it was a video about these 5 theories. And of course, it's really important to learning this theory, and why learning theory important. It is part of the human condition to crave knowledge. Consequently, numerous scientists, psychologists, and thought leaders have devoted their career to studying learning theory. Understanding how people learn is a critical step in optimizing the learning process. It is for these reasons that teacher, college, or educator preparation programs spend so much time having teacher candidates study human development and multiply learning theory. Foundational knowledge is of how humans learn, and especially how a child learn and develop cognitively, is essential for all educators to be their most effective instruction in the classroom. And of course, in addition to the file theory, there are still more options and another theory, and for example, another learning theory. For example, Transformative learning theory. This theory is particularly relevant to adult learners. It posits that new information can essentially change our worldview when our life experience and knowledge are paired with critical reflection. Second one is social learning theory. This theory incorporates some of the tenets of peer pressure. Especially students observe other students and model their own behavior accordingly. Sometimes it's to emulate peers, other time is to distinguish themselves from peers. The power of this theory involves getting student attention, focusing on how students can retain information, identifying what's appropriate to reproduce and previous behavior, and determining student motivation. So, third one, X theory. There are plenty of links and parables about teaching someone something by doing it, although it wasn't until the early 1980s that it became an official learning theory. This approach emphasized both learning about something and experiencing it so that students can apply knowledge in real-world situations. So, we finished with different theory, and later we will also speak next lecture about different school in pedagogy, different idea and different modern form of education. And this form will be considered with famous name and famous scientists. But let's speak about traditional methods in pedagogy. The traditional methods of research in pedagogy, as in psychology, include observation, experiment, testing, and questioning. So it's for the most famous, of course. We've got more methods in pedagogy. So, in the same way as in psychology, the products of pupils' and teachers' activity are studied and analyzed. And analyzed written works, drawing, object of children's creativity, educational documentation, everything is analyzed. Separate importance in pedagogy is the study of the pedagogical experience of individual teachers, mentors, analysis of methodological and pedagogical literature, video material. This study is aimed at identifying historical relationship of upbringing and ethnic behavior in different periods of the country's life, identifying common and sustainable in the educational system. So, observation. Observation is the active In living being, observation employs the sense. In sense, observation can also involve the perception and recording of data via the use of scientific instruments. The term may also refer to any data collected during the scientific activity. Observation can be qualitative, that is only the absence of presence of property is known, or quantitative, if a numeral value is attached to the observed phenomena by counting or measuring. Experiment. An experiment is a procedure carried out to support, refute, or validate a hypothesis. Experiment provides insight, indicates an effect by demonstrating what outcome occur when a particular factor is manipulated. Experiments vary greatly in goal and scale, but always rely on a repeatable procedure and logical analysis of the result. Experiments can raise test score and help learning, especially when used over time. Of course, experiment in psychology and experiment in pedagogy is not the same. It's close together, but experiment in psychology connected with another way, another idea, and experiment in pedagogy is connected with education, teaching, and how educate, different tests, for example. You can say that experiment in pedagogy is, for example, using a different computer program or distant learning like that. It's some small experiment. So, testing. A test or examination is an assessment intended to measure a test-taken knowledge, skill, physical fitness, or classification, and many other topics. A test may be administered verbally on paper, on computer, or in a predetermined area that requires test taker to demonstrate or perform a set of skills. Test vary in style or requirements. There is no general consensus or invariable standard for tests, format, and difficulty. Often the format and difficulty of the test is dependent upon the educational philosophy of the instructor, subject matter, class size, policy of the educational institution, and requirements of accreditation or governing body. Questioning. Questioning is a major form of human thought and interpersonal communication. It involves employing a series of questions to explore an issue, an idea, or something in training. Questioning is a process of forming and wording that serves to develop answer and insight. So all these methods, all this pedagogy theory, everything connected with pedagogical process. And the pedagogical process performs three main functions: educational, and developmental. It is based on certain principles. The most important of these are the principles of integrity, continuity, and focus. And it's important because both adults and children from a certain age clearly understand that it's important to constantly improve the knowledge, skills, and human qualities, and to do this purposefully in order to become an interesting and strong personality. Education a person receives in school, in high school, secondary, specialized institution. In addition, you can get additional education in circular studies and other creative teams. You can educate yourself using book, training programs, and other means of new technology. About pedagogical process also we will speak in December, when we'll speak about education more closely. So, as last part we will speak about it, learning in different age group. So we will speak about European way of learning in different age group. In Russia we've got close but not the same. So because of the difference in cognitive, physical, and social abilities of different age group, different pedagogical approaches are used when working with children of various ages. A technique that works well with a 5-year-old might not be successful with a 4th grader. Similarly, teaching adults require a different approach than the education of high school teenagers, even when the subject matter is the same. Pedagogical approaches and learning theory may be numerous in nature, but the desire of education to examine and discuss these varied approaches and theories will hopefully help create the best possible learning environment for all students from preschool through adult. So, on this picture you can see kindergarten, elementary, middle, high school, and so on. So let's speak about them. So first of all, preschool. One of the most important debates regarding teaching preschool children is our work versus play. While some educators advocate the beginnings of formal education, including math, reading, and foreign language, most imagine play over academic learning at such an early age. Physical development is often stressed, and children are engaged in group activities that aid in socialization. Some preschool programs may be very structured, while others allow the children more choice in their activity. So it's preschool and kindergarten. So in Russia, for example, in kindergarten we can have some lesson or some educational games, but in some kindergarten just games and relax. Elementary school. From kindergarten through grade 5 or 6, generally known as elementary education. Students learn most of their basic reading, writing, and math skills. Education within the public school system is generally more traditional in nature. Many public schools tailor a pedagogical approach to include different learning styles as well as cultural responsiveness. For parents looking for a more student-directed pedagogical approach, private schools like Montessori, Waldorf, and as well as open and free schools offer a variety of approach to childhood education. So in Russia, elementary school is 4 years. First class, second, third, and fourth. So elementary school in Russia is 4 years. Also, we've got a school like Montessori or Waldorf pedagogy, but it's a small school is connected with money, so it's not free education. But in generally, in elementary school, children learn languages, math, reading, some music classes, dancing classes, and so on. And it's age from 6, 7. So elementary school started from generally 7, but sometimes 6 too. Middle school and high school. Educators in many middle and high school programs often use traditional pedagogical approach to learning with lecture and class discussion and providing the core of instruction. Standardized testing, while used occasionally in the lower grades, is much more prevalent in high school. Technology is often an integral part of instruction. In addition to multimedia and education presentation, computer programs have replaced activities like animal dissection in science classes. For those seeking a less teacher-directed approach, alternative high school generally provides smaller class size and more student-directed learning. Other types of private schools, such as military school, often a rigidly structured approach to education that is almost exclusively teacher-directed. So in Russia, middle school and high school is from 5 to 9 and from 10 and 11 classes. So we can say from classes 5 to 9 is middle school, and classes number 10 and 11 in high school. And after 11 you can go to university. After 9 you can go in college, for example, in Russia. In America, in the UK, Great Britain, in France, Germany, and other, of course, part of education. So college. Most colleges and universities primarily employs lecture, laboratory, and discussion as the primary teaching methods. Similar to pedagogical approach in high school, technology provides additional presentation materials as well impacting the way faculty and students communicate. Online discussion groups common. Students may have access to an online message board where they can discuss and cover topic with other students, the professor, and email contact between student and professor can supplement office hour. Professors are often challenged to find new way to address student different learning style, and was creating a learning environment that is accessible to those with learning disability. So in Russia, after 9 classes or after 11 you can go to college, but college in Russia it's another way, and after 11 classes you can go to university, like our Ulyanov State University. So it's after 11 classes, but of course you can go to university after, for example, army or after some years of work. So you can go to university at age of 24, 25, 30, as you wish. But generally, after 11 classes, students go to university and study baccalaureate, magistral program. So study 4 years and then 2 years. But about this we will speak later. So, of course, adult learners. Our middle programs for adult learners, such as literacy program, focus not only on the acquisition of knowledge, but also must deal with the basic and sensitive emotional issue that may face adults in this situation. Adult educators often use students' life experience to help connect them with academic material. Adult learners interested in continuing higher education often find that online or distant learning is easier to fit into a busy schedule than physically attending classes. So of course we've got a lot of various of adult learning. It can be, for example, some program for future work, or just some new information for someone, or for some interests. And let's see another small video. So it will be an example how language teaching methods during the time has changed. So we will see the example in language teaching in just like 5-6 minutes.
Hi, and welcome to the first lesson of the Language Teaching Methodology course. In this first session, we're going to talk about methods in language teaching, and we're going to give a historical timeline of the main language teaching methods. First, language teaching became established as a profession in the 20th century. Ever since, several methods have been proposed, and each one tried to be more effective and theoretically sound. Before the 20th century, a key influence in language teaching was that of Johann Comenius, a Czech scholar and teacher who published books on teaching in the 17th century. Comenius focused on the spiritual development of children, and he claimed that the way they learned was through association to the world around them. Comenius was the first to introduce an inductive approach to language teaching, in which the goal was to teach students to use the language rather than teach them rules and analysis of the language. He used imitation instead of rules, claiming that students should repeat after the teacher. He also encouraged language to be taught through pictures and the practice of reading and speaking. Comenius was quite revolutionary. However, by the beginning of the 19th century, the systematic study of the grammar of classical Latin and classical texts had once again taken over in schools and universities in Europe. The 19th century was characterized by the so-called grammar translation approach, which explicitly focused on studying grammar and translating texts to learn to read literature. This was followed by attempts to make language learning more naturalistic, more similar to the ways children learn their languages. The direct method was introduced in the late 19th century, teaching exclusively in the foreign language and focusing on speaking and listening. In an attempt to give a more scientific foundation to language teaching, other methods, such as situational language teaching, were created, although the real change emerged with the audiolingual method in the 1950s. The audiolingual method, or audiolingualism, was based on psychological theories of behaviorism. According to behaviorism, people's behavior depended on a pattern of stimulus, response, and feedback, and learning a language meant using the language communicatively to form new habits and get rid of old habits from the first language. Lessons in audiolingualism focused on drills, in which students repeated the same target language items again and again. This was in line with behaviorism because it involved a stimulus provided by the teacher or by tape, a response provided by the learner, and feedback provided again by the teacher. In the 1970s and 80s, communicative language teaching emerged as a method. This was thanks to the emergence of cognitive psychology, which claimed that language learning involved active mental processes and conscious learning, and not just getting rid of old habits. Communicative language teaching is an influential teaching method to this day. It started as a reaction to grammar-oriented approaches, focusing on accuracy, and it argued that the goal of language teaching is communication, which is achieved by actually communicating in the target language in class. Another method that originated in the 1970s was called Total Physical Response, or TPR. In TPR, the teacher gives commands to the students with body movements, and the students respond by imitating these movements. In the 1970s, another new orientation to language teaching emerged, called humanistic language teaching. Humanistic language teaching is based on the idea that the whole social and emotional human being, and not just the mind, should be involved in learning a language. Three key methods between the 1970s and 80s were associated with humanism: the silent way, Suggestopedia, and community language learning. The silent way, as the name suggests, is a method based on the idea that the teacher should be silent as much as possible, and the learners should be encouraged to speak. Suggestopedia is based on the idea that learning is fostered by reaching an optimal state of alert relaxation. In this state of relaxation, learning is meant to happen accidentally and naturally. The third humanistic method, community language learning, assumes that students are people with feelings, and that learning happens when they don't feel threatened. The teacher takes on a role similar to a counselor and gradually encourages students to become more independent and collaborative. More recently, a teaching method that has become more and more popular is task-based language teaching, or TBLT, which has strong connections to theories of second language acquisition. TBLT is based on the idea that students can learn language by doing tasks. Students are assessed in terms of whether they manage to complete the task rather than the language they use to do so. Finally, more recently other innovative methods have arisen, such as Dogme, which encourages to teach without textbooks and to focus on the language that emerges from conversation. Another method that has become quite popular is CLIL, or Content and Language Integrated Learning. In CLIL, curriculum content and foreign languages are taught together. In our next lessons, we will talk in more details about the main language teaching methods, looking at their theory and practice.
So it was example in language teaching and how in history different methods changed, and now we've got more modern, more interesting methods of language teaching. So just example, of course. So in the end, pedagogy literally translated as the art or science of teaching children. In modern day usage, it is known for teaching or education, particularly in scholarly writing. Throughout history, educators and philosophers have discussed different pedagogical approaches to education, and numerous theories and techniques have been proposed. Successful education all depends on teachers being able to embrace both the art and science of pedagogy, acting as parents who understand the needs, abilities, and experience of the students, while also being trained in the best method of communication and presentation of appropriate material. So today we'll speak about pedagogy in general, about object, about methods, about different teaching theory, and of course about how, in what age, and how we can teach and who we can teach. This lecture, of course, I sent this lecture to your mentor today, and later this lecture appear on portal also. And your next seminar will connect it with some questions and small essay. So on pedagogical part, we will speak about different cases in pedagogy. You will read some different story about pedagogy, about some school experience, and write your opinion. Of course, about this I'll write in portal soon your task, and you understand what you need to do. Next lecture in December we will speak about, as I said, famous scientist of pedagogy and this idea, famous scientists from Europe, from Russia, and from other countries, and also see different modern way of teaching. And today, subject object, learning theory, and education system, we will discuss it, and we will see some video. So right now I need to see how many students here. Okay, very good. Okay, great. So I sent this presentation to your mentor, and mentor please send to your group, and also later it will appear on portal also. And also later I wrote in general chat of your mentor what will be your task for seminar in generally, and of course you will see your task for the seminar in portal also according to your schedule. So you read everything and understand what you need to do. For our lecture number 6, right, we finished. So we just start understanding what is pedagogy, but I think you see that pedagogy and philosophy, psychology, of course, pedagogy and psychology, it's not the same. I remember about philosophy because philosophy is a part, like fundament of these two sciences. So first of all it was philosophy, then pedagogy and psychology. But I think you see that it's really close together, but not the same. So let's finish with our lecture number 6, and see you next lecture in December. It will be 10 of December, and then 24. So we've got 2 lectures more. It's not so many, so very soon we finished with our course Pedagogy and Psychology. So if you got some question, your mentor can write me in chat. Another student, you can write me in portal or by mail. So let's finish. Thank you for watching.